my own wine. I've just been doing. Bienvenue. Welcome once again to another property podcast. This is the first one of the week. It's called Property Matters. Stars Hamish McClay of Search and Convey. And today's special guest is Tiffany Fairbrother, a friend of the show, and works with us both actually from time to time. So very nice to see you here, Tiffany. Today's topic is one that will resonate with so many people. It's renters' rights and the end of blanket bans. Nice bit of alliteration. And to start us off, as ever, Hamish McClay.
Well, it would perhaps come as no surprise if our government decided that they would ban blankets. But that isn't the topic of conversation. When we speak about a blanket ban, and it's just creating awareness yet again, what we try and do with so many of our podcasts is create awareness to people out there, because a lot of things happen that people are not made aware of as sort of moving forward, but they become very, very important in the order of things. Now, this is another one which comes out. One could sort of perhaps look at it and sort of suggest what is actually going to be the outcome. Now, this is putting the onus on landlords so when they go around advertising their particular sort of properties as being vacant, they're looking for somebody, they're looking for a new tenant, they're looking for a new resident, that they cannot put down within their advertisement no pets or professionals only, or comments of that particular nature. And the tragedy of that is, ultimately, the solution, or in fact the offering, still comes down, the landlord makes the ultimate decision. It's not the person that's applying that makes the decision, because there's no reason why once the landlord goes through it, he just doesn't come back to what he was going to say in the first place. What could happen, and we will discuss this because Tiffany fortunately knows, she knows a little bit more about it than I do. However, if the landlord because he hasn't put down no DSS, no pets or whatever, is he going to get more applicants and therefore have more work to do to get through all the various people that, as we know, as soon as a vacancy arises, there is a massive number of people that just go, we want that flat type touch, and they get inundated with calls. Is it going to increase the number of calls? Is it going to make anything better for those who are looking for properties? Or is it going to be tougher on them as well?
Well, I'm going to throw the first question over to you, Tiffany. What's your thoughts on in response to what Hamish just said?
So this whole blanket bans is very much a double-sided coin. I can see the massive benefits of it. Obviously, things like no pets, things like no professionals, because I know an awful lot of people that have struggled to find rented properties purely on the basis that they've got animals, which I think is ridiculous. What questions I have is the people that are looking for private rented homes that are on benefits, they're going to carry on. I believe it won't make a great deal of difference to them anyway, because to me, private rented homes can only be afforded by people who have private rented money. So in the sense that I mean that people on benefits don't necessarily have the money to afford a private rented home. Now, I know that people on benefits do get rent payments paid for them. However, if you look into it, they are only entitled to so much. So anybody on benefits that has rent payments paid from their benefits are entitled to what's called a local housing allowance. So you take in consideration my area, So anybody that is entitled to local housing allowance from my area, say a couple with one child entitled to a 2-bedroom house, is entitled to £136.93 a week. So over a month basis, 4 weeks, that's just shy of £550 in rent. I don't know of any private rented properties in my area, especially 2-bedroom, that you can find for £550 a month. So anybody who is on benefits that would be looking for a private rented house would still be looking at paying out £150, £200 plus extra towards our rent. So as much as the ban on the blanket bans is a good idea in theory, there's a lot of extra things that need to be looked into as well.
So what you're saying is that it may appear to be an easy way through, but in fact it comes with its own pitfalls.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of extra things in the background that need looking at before people can make the applications. And as we already know, the local housing allowance is froze for the next coming tax year as well anyway. So the rents are going up, but the local housing allowance is staying exactly the same.
Hamish, this doesn't appear to be an equitable way forward. It just seems to be you give with one hand and slap round the face with the other.
Well, there's not so much to slap round the face. It does not achieve anything other than the fact that some words are removed from somebody when you want to advertise a vacancy. It's still up to the landlord as to who he considers to be the most effective resident, tenant, client, whatever one wants to sort of put on it. He still makes that final decision. So just by taking words away from it, there are many more difficulties. I mean, Tiff has actually explained one of the most serious ones is the local housing allowance. Because, I mean, we had this in the insane situation. We can't just blame this government for it, because the Conservative government had done it previously. And it was only in 2024 that the local housing allowance was unlocked slightly and improved, so it could make it more selectable, if you like, for those who are looking for those who are sort of trying to find a property with housing benefits. But of course, what has happened, and there's 3 or 4 things sort of happened sort of in between that. First of all, the government's taken over control, which has actually, because of various impositions so far in the 18 months that they've been there, they've pushed up rents. So that gap between what the allowance and what people can actually sort of are expected to pay has made it much, much bigger. But it's still not, whatever happens, it's still not going to change the thoughts and the needs. We need to look at the needs of the landlords. Landlords are not philanthropists. They would like, in many, many respects, and we know about some of them. I mean, Silas, who joins us quite regularly, so says it's far better and far more if you can maintain the rent at whatever it happens to be for as long as you possibly can, and only increase it when necessary. Now, this is what the private landlords do, and this is good to actually sort of see. However, to make life much, much easier for somebody looking for a property, it's not going to make it any easier at all. Because as Tiff was explained to me yesterday about one particular client he knows of who spent something like, perhaps next door, Tiff explained, who was trying to find a property where she could actually sort of rent it out because she had pets. A lot of people have pets, and, they're a great, great thing for anybody to actually sort of have. Our conversation earlier about cats and cat trays and such like things that came to the fore. However, what we would like to see, if we are going to introduce any kind of legislation, we would like it to simplify things and not complicate it. And I personally don't actually see doing that. But what we should point out is the whole object of this particular podcast is to create the awareness in people that this is going to be the norm as of, in fact, I'm sure, I can't remember what the dates are. I don't know the specific date, but it's about to happen, like
Yes.
many of the other things that are about to actually sort of come in.
Yeah, it's definitely imminent. Tiffany, how will this affect you going forward?
It won't particularly affect me, but it will affect a lot of people that I know. Like I've said previously, both in good and potentially not so good positions. As Hamish was saying before, there's one of my neighbours has been looking for the last 12 months for a private rented home and has just struggled and fell at each hurdle because she's got 2 dogs. So what's happened? And then one of my other neighbours, one of her family members has also been looking for a home for months and months and can't because she's got pets. So what's now happening is my neighbour that's moving out has managed to find somewhere, and then my neighbour's family member is moving into her old house because they accept pets. It's
the only way through, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it is. So in aspects like that, I think potentially it could help. But as Hamish said, they can make that first step of the application, but just because they've made the application doesn't then mean that they're going to be guaranteed the property, because ultimately it will still be up to the landlord.
But surely going forward, people in that position are looking for a degree of solidity, that they know what's going to happen in the future. That their life becomes more predictable. This is going to make it anything but, surely.
Yeah, this is going to make it anything but. I don't think it's going to make it's. I think it's going to give people false hope to start with, because I think people are going to apply for houses, think, oh yeah, we've got a chance because there's no blanket bans anymore. We can apply for anything that we want, for the landlord to just turn around and say no. But in the same stone, so I understand, because obviously, as Hamish just said, it's going to put more pressure on the landlord, more work for the landlord, because there's going to be more applications, where the landlord just wants to get somebody in as quick as possible because they've got their mortgage to pay.
But the landlord, I think, only wants to have people in that he feels fit the rather narrowing criteria that they're going to put out. So surely,
yeah, and I don't think I can't see this, because the rules are in place doesn't mean that anything's going to change. In my opinion.
Oh dear. So these rules, Hamish, do you think they have any teeth?
Well, like so much of what we do have, there's no regulation applied to it, but it'd be fairly evident if somebody we do have. I don't know. We've got the text police on about us at the moment. We need to be so careful about what we say about absolutely anything. Is this just another example of that? I think probably it is.
Some people would have us believe it was, but I think it's more than that.
The situation is, and it's in my innocence. I was innocent when
When was that then? When was that, Hamish?
Well, a few years ago now. When I first started my business, for example, anybody that was willing to buy the product that we were working with at the time,
right,
and a very, very basic product in those days, we weren't actually providing a full service. Anybody that wanted to buy it, I'd sell it to them. Now, I can't work with everybody. I don't want to work with everybody. I'd like to be selective about who I work with. There are certain criteria that must be there. If they're not genuinely reasonable people, it's a bit deeper than that. However, you get the understanding. Whereas I will work only with people that I trust. I enjoy their company. They're the sort of people that I like. They have values that are similar to mine. And landlords are exactly the same. They're just human beings. I mean, unfortunately, we've got, and I believe actually the Conservative government were doing this for a fair while as well. They were imposing so many different, I can't remember how many different changes there have been. I'm sure I saw something this morning. Tiff might have picked up on it as well somewhere or other. There's somebody who's saying since something like 2015, there's been 19 changes.
I think that's perfectly believable.
And as a consequence, a lot of people just don't know what the heck's actually going on. And this is just another of them. Is there any relevancy? A lot of them have imposed so much more upon landlords, thinking, so landlords are thinking. I mean, I know 2 landlords, actually. They just want to get rid of their properties. And in fact, this is going to be a loss because they're both very, very reasonable people.
Friend of the show, Chris Gilson, who we've spoken to many times before, who is a property developer, says that more and more landlords are cashing in their tips as fast as they can.
So we've got this situation. So people are going to have to tolerate the corporate landlords who really are going to make it even more difficult. I don't know what they can actually do as they choose because it's their property. They can let out that property to whoever they choose to let out that property to.
My worry about the corporatization of renting, which, as you say, Hamish, I think is on the horizon anyway. If you look in Germany, it's become the norm. They tend to be less flexible, and they don't care about your personal situation. They want their money, or you're out. And
that's right. So yeah. So if you can afford to pay for it, you can have it. And when you're actually looking for, and I mean, typical that know this, particularly through some of the situations their colleagues have got into as well, is the fact there will be more competition. And therefore, as a consequence, the one with child, the one with pet, go below the professional couple, if you like.
Right.
And not only that, the professional couple can afford it. No strings attached, nice and straightforward.
Yeah, well, because in the corporate sector, what they want is simplicity and repeatability. In the private sector, you get less of that, but you get more personality. And the worry for me is that the move from the private landlord towards the corporate landlord might be disastrous for communities that have built up in the rented sector. Tiffany, the move towards corporatization, which is so rife in Germany, where everywhere is owned by one place, that you often don't even have a telephone number. You have to interface with a chatbot to get things sorted. Do you see that? I mean, in my mind, it seems that disastrous move, but it's almost inevitable now.
Yeah, absolutely. As Chris made the comment, so many smaller landlords pulling out now. It's going to be the only way that it can go.
Wow, Hamish, we are running a little bit late. Would you care to take us home?
Well, I think we've concluded that it really isn't going to change anything other than probably the workload of the landlord. It's not going to make it easier, and it's probably going to make it slightly more difficult for those putting in an application, because the thing is, people will look at it and say, oh, this is nice. In fact, Tiff mentioned this. Oh, look, this is nice and straightforward. There aren't any restrictions here. Let's apply. It's like applying for a job where nobody sort of suggests what the qualifications or what the criteria are for you to put in that application. You need to put something in there to give people the appropriate target, because then you say, well, that's a waste of time looking at that.
Right.
There's 35 properties coming up. Only 5 of those are going to be available to those people who are getting, they're on benefits. It might even be less than 5 out of 35.
And out those 5, only one of them will take cats and dogs.
Yes. So it's the various complications. If people were allowed to display what they could say, if they could say, oh, we can take dogs, we can take cats, we can take anything we can actually do, it would be far better. It would be a far more presentable way for landlords to be able to do it. So here we've got legislation complication instead of legislation simplification. And it's just taking words out from one direction, but it doesn't help anybody in the long run. It rather actually makes a bit more work, sadly. But it's not offering any solution, which is a bit of a shame. It would be good to see a solutions. Would be good to see people being able to describe exactly what they could accept, because some people, and it's worth looking at this, because some of those smaller private landlords, they perhaps don't have that much to spare. There was an investment, this particular property, and there might, because of what they're doing, they've kept that rent, kindly kept that rent down. They don't want to go to the increases. There, if you call it a profit margin, it's very often not even necessarily sort of profit. But if they're very, very low sort of margins there, and all of a sudden the expectation comes up, they've got to do that a little bit more. The local housing sort of affordability isn't such any longer, because they're like, as Tiff explained earlier, the rents have gone right up. So anybody who's sort of on benefits cannot afford those anyway. So altogether, nobody benefits. So the landlord says, I'm off ski. So,
well, in the words of a Frenchman from 1850, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. The more things change, the more that they stay exactly the same. I'm neither buoyed up nor too dismayed by that. Frankly, I think there's more to come. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for taking the time to be here. Hamish, thank you for helping set this up. And to all of you watching, I saw about 50 of you suddenly arrive, and then after about 10 minutes leave. Do come back next time. We're going to be talking about more topics that affect everyone in the property market. And tomorrow we have Ipso Kind of Magic, one of my favorite shows, which is to do with the Association of Independent Personal Search Agents, to which Hamish happens to be the current chairman. And then on Thursday we have Property Quorum, and on Friday we have Cladding Matters. Don't miss out for them. But until next time, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please, in these troubled times, try and look after your mental health. Bye-bye now.